Good morning, welcome to CATEX TV. My name is Frank Fortunato. Today is Tuesday, April 23rd, 2013. Heavy rainfall, severe thunderstorms, and flash flooding tore across several Midwestern states in the United States early last week after moist air surged ahead of a strong cold front. While the worst of the rainfall has passed, many rivers in the U.S. are still swollen and more rain is expected today. Flood warnings remain in effect from Michigan to northern Arkansas and Tennessee. More importantly, the flooding and the rains have inundated crops and delayed the 2013 corn and soybean planting seasons, upon which many other commodities depend. It could shorten the growing season. It's still too early to assess the production risk and chances of potential losses later on. Of course, last year the country was hit with a massive drought with significant crop losses that had to be paid out by insurers. Illinois has been particularly hit. There was almost 7 inches of rain measured at Chicago O'Hare in 24 hours. The Mississippi River, however, though, is expected to crest today at 35 feet. Which will be flooding in some areas. However, it's way below the 2011 Mississippi flood level of 48 feet. There's high tension going on between India and China. India has accused Chinese soldiers of launching an incursion deep into Indian territory. The Chinese troops penetrated approximately 6 miles into Indian territory about a week ago and pitched tents in the Depsang Valley in the Ladakh region of eastern Kashmir. Indian Army commanders have met at least twice with their Chinese counterparts, but the Chinese troops continue to remain in Indian territory. They are not vacating the position so far, said the Indian military commander. China dismissed reports of an incursion as India media speculation and said the border region has been peaceful. However, India says that Chinese troops have repeatedly crossed the border in recent years, leaving garbage with Chinese markings as evidence of their presence. This most recent incursion was far deeper into Indian territory than before. People forget that in 1962, these two countries had a shooting war that resulted in about 1,000 casualties. It was very close to going real. Well, here's another casualty of the Solvency II delay in Europe. South Africa has postponed the introduction of its own new solvency assessment and management system regime for insurers, although it's imperative that the new risk-based framework is rolled out in the next few years, according to AM Best, the insurance industry rating agency. The insurance regulator in South Africa has been developing the new standards modeled on the principles of the Solvency II directive in Brussels. The new South African regime was going to take effect in January of 2015, but now it will not be pushed back. It will be pushed back until January of 2016, which is supposedly the same time that the European Solvency II will come out. AM Best said that if the framework was applied today, it is likely that several South African insurers would be unable to comply with all the requirements. So this gives some breathing space to everybody. Graham Village at Insurance Day has written an interesting article today about the Lloyd's performance in 2012. He said that counterintuitively, Lloyd's turned in a much stronger performance last year in a year that saw a major U.S. catastrophe loss, much more than it did in 2011 when the U.S. was largely spared significant damage. This is despite the fact that Lloyd's 41% of Lloyd's market comes from North America, the most important region for Lloyd's. Lloyd's was comfortably able to shrug off the damage caused by Hurricane Sandy last year to post a pre-tax profit of about $4.2 billion U.S. This is quite a turnaround from the previous year's loss of about $780 million U.S. It would be far too much to say that Sandy had a minimal impact on the market. The storm brought Lloyd's net claims of $1.3 billion, making it one of the largest individual losses to ever hit the market. According to Mr. Village, in a year of generally low major loss activity, Sandy, however, did fall within the cat loss budgets of most syndicates. The only other big loss was the grounding of the Costa Concordia, which Lloyd's estimate will produce a net loss of close to about $340 million U.S. Lloyd's saw a non-claim reserve affected combined ratio of about 98.3%. So they did underwrite to a profit. The number of new reinsurers being set up in Bermuda has increased 85% over the past year alone. 13 new companies were registered in the first quarter of 2013. 5 of them were captives, 8 of them were special purpose vehicles that will act either as sidecars or cat bond placing entities. Here's an interesting story. Aftershocks of a magnitude 5.8 earthquake that rattled Virginia back in 2011 and damaged the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. might have been triggered by, of all things, Hurricane Irene. While the frequency of aftershocks usually decrease with time, the rate of aftershocks following the August 2011 earthquake near Mineral, Virginia, increased sharply as Hurricane Irene passed by 4 days later. Scientists did not notice the unusual pattern until they used pattern recognition techniques to detect small aftershocks that were buried by the seismic noise caused by Irene. And what they found was the biggest increase in aftershocks did not occur when the barometric pressure was at its lowest or when the storm was passing over. They did find a spike in the rate that occurred hours after the storm receded. While this may suggest that pressure change was not the trigger of the aftershocks, it did increase that there was a connection. The scientists say that basically it's a single case study. Hopefully we will do this for other events as well. Wouldn't that be interesting? Federal officials in the United States have said that they are delaying a policy that would allow passengers to bring knives onto airplanes. That's good news. The Transportation Safety Administration said yesterday that the policy has been delayed to accommodate feedback from consumers. The FAA, or the TSA, currently confiscates about 2,000 folding knives every day from passengers. The change that they would have implemented would allow small baseball bats, golf clubs, and knives to be brought onto the plane. Many passengers, pilots, and flight attendants across the country were outraged that people would be allowed to bring knives back onto airplanes. One frequent flyer said, "I don't like it. I travel every week, and I don't think they should be allowed to bring knives on planes. It's that simple." Perhaps some good did come out of the terror attacks